bummed that I can't see you backstage dancing anymore.
I wasn't dancing today.
I'm just saying, if you had been. Are you ready for this for my cold opening here? Check this out.
I have been dying for this, so yes, please.
Share my screen. Since you didn't really watch the last one like 100% attentively, I'm giving you another opportunity here.
Okay. Let's do it.
I don't hate your mother. Morning, Bev.
There's some other really funny ones that I really can't play on air, but I'll have to send them to you some other time.
If anybody
How
wants
are
to
you?
know what it's like to work with Dylan, this is now you know.
I mean, I like to make people laugh. Look, I like to have a good time. That's what you get with me. How's your Wednesday going?
Um, I feel like it's already 4 p.m. in the afternoon, but it's 9:30 in the morning my time.
Yeah. What you have your NASM shirt on. Are you doing something awesome with them today?
No, I just need to do laundry, and this is like the last collared
Oh,
shirt in my closet.
yeah, that's fair. Well,
uh,
let's just
which,
get
if
on
you're
with it.
looking for a nutrition certification, go to nasm.org.
And don't pronounce them don't call them NASM because apparently they
No.
hate that. I learned that from Brad. He's like, don't let them hear you calling them NASM. Not what you want to do. But we thanks for tuning in with us. I wasn't sure how that intro was going to go. We're using some new software today, so hopefully it went off without a hitch and nobody noticed. But we're going to dive right into the episode like we usually do. So this one is about increasing increasing your lifespan, or as we're calling it, increasing longevity. And this is all about how you can use exercise and nutrition for a longer life. So how do I what are the things I can do to, you know, live longer? And we are always searching, people are searching for the fountain of youth, right? And realistically, taking care of your body is the best way to do that. And given that we are a fitness and nutrition company, it just made sense to kind of give people an idea of how you can intentionally give yourself a chance to live longer. So that's what we're going to dive into today. It's all about, you know, lifting weights, staying active, eating well. You know, those are the real fountains of youth. So I know a lot of people that are listening and that listen to this show and that are clients of ours. You know, they're not just trying. Obviously, weight loss is a big goal for a lot of people, but I do hear from a lot of people that, hey, I want to look better, I want to feel younger, like I want to. I think also as you get older, you know, people in your 50s, 60s, 70s, beyond, you know, the older you get, like obviously you want to remain independent, right? And your best chance of doing that is to feel strong, feel like you can walk up a flight of stairs without being at risk. And so taking care of yourself physically through nutrition and also mentally is a huge part of that. So, so that's, yeah, that's kind of what we're going to talk about in a nutshell. I was just talking to, how old are your parents, Brad?
My dad is 65 and my mom is 63, almost 64.
Okay, so your parents are like basically the same age as mine. My dad's 66, and he was just over this weekend, and we were talking about, I mean, we were talking about all sorts of stuff. But I was basically like, you know, are you lifting anymore? Like, are you, you know, what do you do for exercise? And basically just got to talking about how he, you know, he's as active as he can be, but he's not really lifting anymore. And I just kind of brought up the point. I was like, well, I said, what do you think happens if you start lifting weights like at your age? You know, what I said specifically, what do you think happens to your bones? And he goes, well, I'd imagine they become denser. I was like, that's true. And like, you know, why do you think that matters? And then we got to talking about how basically the older you get, and especially if you're like, if you're in your late 60s, early 70s and beyond, and you break like a hip, let's say, or a major bone, what's the stat that goes like it's something like you're like I think like 1 out of 4 people after that point die within like a year. It's something staggering like that. And I
Yeah, it's
just
like
pointed out to him, I'm
30
like, you should,
something percent. Yeah, it's pretty high.
yeah, it is. So I pointed out to him, I'm like, look, you're 66. You're not old, but like, hey, you're gonna, in 4 years, you're gonna be in your 70s. And so I'm like, it's really, it's time obviously start thinking about lifting weights and getting into a routine again so you can build that bone density. But again, we just got to talking about remaining independent. And I think people don't really maybe forecast out that far when nobody wants to be eventually put into a home and having to be taken care of, right? You want to get into your 70s and 80s and be able to take care of yourself. So that's where my parents are at. It just was kind of an interesting conversation that we've had. Is that something you talk to your parents about at all? Do you guys have those types of discussions, or is it like something that you think they're already aware of?
I mean, I don't really talk to them about it directly. I mean, they'll ask questions and stuff, but
Yeah,
we don't sit around the table and have
sure,
conversations about that.
that's fair. So, okay, so the first place that I've kind of outlined where we should start is there in our notes here. Well, literally says the difference between surviving and thriving in older age. Let's just define that because there is a difference between I want to live, I'd rather live until I'm 85, be able to do things on my own than to live until 95, but like most of those years I can't do much by myself, right? Like the differences there I think are the things to point out. So, you know, maybe starting there.
Yeah, I
As
mean,
in, yeah, the the difference between surviving and thriving. Why should we what are we actually striving for here?
so it's interesting. I actually spent a lot of time in 2024 working on longevity. I helped a colleague with a project, and so I spent a lot of time just sort of helping him through the science of longevity. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this over the last 12 to 18 months. And here's the reality: we all die, right?
Bummer.
We all die, and one of the gifts and curses of modern medicine is we can keep people alive a long time. But the process of living when you are healthy versus unhealthy is very different, right? There's a big difference between being able and having a high capacity to do things and then dropping dead of a heart attack at 85 on the golf course versus having the slow decay from the age of 50 until you're 90 in in an assisted living home. That 40 years difference is your life. And
Yeah,
so
for
when we
sure.
talk about longevity, there is the lifespan, which is the age at which you die, and the health span, which is the area under the curve of if you were to like put health capacity, living, whatever on the y-axis and age on the x-axis of like how much area under that curve is your life. And so when we talk about longevity, it's more of a discussion at this point of health span necessarily than it is lifespan. Because the reality is, like if you look at why we die, it's all diseases of aging, which are all diseases of entropy and stuff accumulating, whether it's cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, like all these things are just the inevitability of biology. But you can actually delay how those processes occur. And so really what we talk about when we talk about longevity, it's more of health span than lifespan. Like you could keep somebody on a ventilator and like, pretty much alive technically for a long time,
They're not right.
but you're not living. And so I think the discussion really is like, what is it that determines health span? Because
How
that's
good you feel during those years, really.
how much life do you accumulate between when you're born and when you die versus how much just being alive do you have?
So the way I think of it is the word health span that you mentioned is a really good way to encompass that because your health span is what you're doing with those years, how you're feeling, right? Because what's the point of living till 90 if the last 20 years of your life are nothing but pain and pills and doctor visits, right? I think true longevity is about thriving during those years, not just surviving. So it's waking up with energy, it's being able to walk by yourself, it's chasing your grandkids, traveling, building a garden, whatever matters to you. Um, I think the kicker too is, and I love talking about this, and we've done it many times, but genetics do play a role, obviously, in this. But I know there's research out there that shows something like 75%. I don't know the exact number, but like up to 75% of your health is influenced by your lifestyle choices, right? And so, that's exercise, nutrition, sleep, reducing your stress. So not your DNA, right? So that means you're not just a passenger that is, going through life. I mean, you're the driver, and you can influence a lot of this stuff. So just thought that was
Yeah.
very important to mention.
I mean, I think it actually goes even deeper than that. Like, let's take the genetic lottery roll of the dice out of the equation, and we ask, and we can get into some of the like hardcore deep science about this, but what are the things that we can do from a medical intervention, lifestyle intervention that actually improve your health span? And the reality is 90-ish% of it is the food you consume and the activity you engage in. And it comes down to like, I'm trying to think of how much of this I can say. Most of it comes down to the overall capacity that you've built in your body. So when we talk about like what actually drives aging, it comes down to a couple things. One, almost all of diseases of aging come down to a concept called cellular senescence, right? In which your cells basically become, for lack of a better word, old and die, right? Or they become old and non-functional. That process is dictated almost entirely by the like insults that your body and your cells are exposed to, and the capacity of your body to repair from those things, right? You can try to slow down the aging of your cells by not exposing them to much, right? You could live in a bubble. You could not ever have UV rays. You could not ever have too many calories. You could not ever, have any environmental exposure. You could never be in an accident. Like, you could do all these things. But the reality is, you're far better off trying to build the capacity of your body to repair and restore itself, right? Like, think about it. Think about like you own a home, right? Your house can last you 100 years if either it's never exposed to rain, sun, wind, water, like anything, or if you're a handyman and you develop the skills to repair things as they slowly get damaged, you can keep it running. Same like a car, right?
Same
you could
with
either
a car, right? Yeah, exactly.
You could either leave your car in the garage for forever, and it's probably going to last quite a while until like the fuel lines dry out and stuff like that, or you develop the ability to like change your own oil and replace the spark plugs and do a transmission fluid flush. Like, you can make that car last longer. It's the same thing with your body. And so when we think about like, okay, from a cellular repair perspective, you have a couple options. One is you can try to do a whole bunch of like modern cellular engineering and pharmacology to try to augment the repair capacity of your cells, or you can activate the biology that you have, in which when you are exposed to certain types of stress, your body enhances its capacity to repair things. This is fundamentally why when you lift weights, you build more muscle tissue. When you lift weights, you build more bone tissue. When you expose your cells to short-term metabolic stress, they increase their capacity to repair from that metabolic stress. When you engage in cardiovascular training, you expose your cells to higher levels of oxidative stress within a narrow band, so they become more adaptive at handling oxidative stress. And so when you actually think about like what you can do to at the point where your body actually ages at the cellular level, exercise basically improves all of those things
Right.
that allow your
Right.
body to repair itself. So it's
Yeah.
not only important, it's probably the single most effective way
Yeah.
to improve your ability to live longer.
Right. So let's talk about those things, right? Let's break down the biggest levers that we can pull. I've already talked about a few of those, but strength training, let's just start right there. Right? That one is huge. And we know that muscle mass, I mean the amount, yeah, I guess muscle mass would be the right term. Muscle mass is one of the biggest predictors of mortality in older adults, right? And we also know that the more muscle you have, the lower your risk of death from all causes. More muscle also means, increased bone density, better overall metabolic health. And then I think the big one is, and I speak on this because my grandma was she fell. And I think it was her hip that broke. I can't remember if it was something in her leg, but I believe it was the hip. But anyways, after that, it wasn't long that, it was like a year later she ended up dying. So preventing falls, I think, is huge. And I think that goes toward, again, that's one of the benefits of lifting weights is you want to be independent and you want to be strong and you don't want to fall. If you're older and you fall, that's a big problem. It can be a very serious issue. So strength training, we can dive into these a little bit more. Cardiovascular exercise, so AKA cardio. So even things like walking can be huge. That improves, so walking, biking. I think swimming's highly underrated. All of those things that improve your, like what you're looking to do is you're looking to improve your VO2 max, right? Like you're looking to, that's another longevity marker is, if you keep your heart and your lungs healthy and your blood vessels strong, how critically important is that for us? Like wildly important, right? So you're trying to increase your oxidative capacity. Is that fair to say? Like that's what you're trying to do with cardio exercise.
So I think it goes even deeper than this. And I'm going to read something that I wrote a while ago on this topic. And I think this will tackle a lot of questions in one. So let me, this is going to be a little bit of a long-winded paragraph here, but just bear with me.
Here, a long-winded paragraph.
Despite the various populations and various analytical tools and frameworks, these studies have all arrived at a similar finding. VO2 max strongly forecasts all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease-related mortality and risk declines between 5 and 10% for every 1 milligram per kilogram per minute increase in your VO2 max. Nice. The effectiveness of VO2 max goes deeper than just having strong prognostic capacity. It also appears to account for nearly the same amount of total risk prediction capacity as a standard biomarker panel. In fact, if you compare measures of cardiorespiratory fitness, such as VO2 max, directly to one of the most famous heart disease risk calculators, the Framingham Risk Score, you will find that cardiorespiratory fitness actually does a much better job of predicting cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. To put this into numbers, traditional risk models for cardiovascular disease, such as the Framingham Risk Score model, which includes age, gender, blood pressure, total cholesterol, HDL, diabetes status, and smoking status, are accurate in only about 65 to 80% of cases. Conversely, cardiorespiratory fitness using VO2 max or a proxy, e.g. metabolic equivalence, risk models are accurate in 70 to 90% of cases. Importantly, this is observed without any biochemical data. Also, if you include measures of cardiorespiratory fitness, you are almost always going to improve the accuracy of traditional blood-based biomarkers. This begs the question, why is VO2 such an excellent forecaster of health and healthful outcomes? The best lens to view this from is that VO2 max is actually a measure of health, not merely absence of disease. As discussed earlier, VO2 max is essentially an outcome-based metric that provides an assessment of the cumulative function of your entire cardiovascular system.
Right.
In order for VO2 max to be considered high, you must have a cardiovascular system that is operating at a high capacity. This means not only do the individual components have to be free of disease, these systems, e.g., lungs, heart, blood, vasculature, muscles, cells, and organelles like mitochondria, must have the ability to perform at supranormal levels. Put simply, being cardiovascularly healthy is almost always a prerequisite for high levels of cardiorespiratory fitness. So when we talk about like measures of health in the traditional sense, like if you go get your blood work done at your doctor and it's like cholesterol is normal, triglycerides are normal, blood pressure is normal, those are all telling you you're probably free of disease. They're not telling you that you are operating at a high level of health. However, in most cases, if you have a relatively high VO2, the rest of your body has to be functioning relatively normal. Now, there's obviously the cases where like you could have cancer, you could have like pancreatic cancer and still be able to have a high VO2 and like you're going to die in a few years. But like in general, when you measure the performance of your body, it's a better metric of longevity than just markers that say you're free of disease.
So, in other words, if there were a lot of things wrong with your body, you wouldn't have a high VO2 reading. Is that kind of what that's saying?
Effectively, yes. I mean, there's obviously nuances there, and there's
Yeah,
like
of course.
edge cases where like you
of
could
course.
be out of shape but still have a high. You could be unhealthy and still have a high VO2.
But in
like
general.
for the average population, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And so, what's the best way to increase our VO2 max?
Exercise.
But is there a specific, obviously, but is there a specific type that does that the best for us? Like, would we be better sprinting, for example, and doing a bunch of sprints as opposed to long distance running?
You need both, right? And so VO2 max is effectively a measure of three things. One, your heart's ability to adapt to stress so you can increase your cardiac output, which means you have to have a higher stroke volume
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be able to increase your heart rate. Now, you can increase your heart rate relatively easily when you're quote out of shape. But your stroke volume, increasing the stroke volume is a result of the accumulation of large volumes of exercise. So you can't just like sprint and get very large like eccentric remodeling and increase your cardiac output. So you have to do like some level of sustained cardiovascular effort to get that type of cardiovascular change. The second is you have to have changes in your muscle tissue and your end organ tissue from a metabolic perspective. So you have to have mitochondrial adaptation, so you have more mitochondrial density. You have to be able to handle greater glycolytic flux, and you have to build capillary density. That primarily comes from more like sustained cardiovascular training, right? And then you have to have the ability of your lungs to basically take up more air. That comes from a little bit of like more endurance training. It also comes from like some of the higher intensity repeated intervals. So you really need repeated high intensity and sustained more moderate to moderate high cardiovascular training. Like you can't walk your way to a 70 mils per kilogram per minute VO2.
Yeah.
And you can't just sprint your way. So it's like you have to do a little bit of that moderate, continuous endurance training.
So let's talk about, there's a couple other things that we know going back to what we were talking about, some of the levers that you can pull to increase your health span. We basically talked about the exercise portion of things only, but there's two other critical components, right? Nutrition obviously is a huge one. And when we talk about nutrition, especially in this, like in our community, people talk about, sometimes people think that if we're just counting macros, that we don't care about what we eat as long as we're hitting your macros, right? But it's not just about hitting your calories. It's not just about hitting your macros. Longevity is about giving your body the right building blocks to like you said earlier, repairing your cells, right? The right building blocks to grow and to defend yourself against disease. And so that's, For example, enough protein for muscle retention, your fiber and proper macronutrients for your gut health, your immune health, keeping inflammation and blood sugar in check, right? Those are huge things. So the quality of your food absolutely matters. And then I think the other one that I want to mention is other lifestyle habits. Smoking, alcohol, limit those. Don't smoke. I mean, if you quitting smoking is like one of the biggest longevity hacks out there, but limit your alcohol, get plenty of sleep, try to manage your stress as best you can. And I think those are sometimes easier said than done because I think a lot of people have stressful jobs, stressful lifestyles, but managing that as much as you can and finding ways to optimize your environment so that you are able to manage your stress better is big. And then getting sleep, which, by the way, I know you don't get much sleep, so you need to work on that. That's me telling you to work on your sleep, Bradley.
I've
And
gotten
I know
much
having
better
I
at my
know
sleep, actually.
uh, have you though, especially with a little one in the house now waking you up.
Yeah.
Well, that's good though. That's good. Okay, good. But yeah, so where do you want to tackle first? Can we talk about nutrition? Like, do you want to expand on that? Because so much of what we do in this group and what we talk about is nutrition related, right? But like, expand on what I talked about. Like, what do we do to really optimize our health from a nutrition standpoint?
Yeah. So before I jump to that, we did have a question. Michelle asked, how accurate are VO2 numbers from a tracker, EG or IE, like a
Oh,
Garmin? They're not super precise, but they're reliable enough that you can use them in the wild.
you could use trends.
Like let's say your Garmin or your Apple Watch or whatever says you have a VO2 of like 45. The reality is you're probably somewhere between 40 and 50, right? It's not going to say 45 and you have a 70. So they're not precise, but they're usable. Like if you spend 2 years working on your VO2, your watch is going to show a change of like probably from 30 to 50, and that's going to be relatively accurate for what the relative change is. So I wouldn't use them for research purposes, but for like field testing, it's probably okay. Okay. So when we talk about nutrition and longevity, there's a few ways to tackle this. And I'm just trying to sort out in my head like what the best way to go about this is. So and the things I'm going to say are maybe just my own opinion based on the research I've read and how I think about like biology, aging, longevity. So this may be just my own like mental model of how this works. The very first place to start is maintaining a healthy body mass by being in energy balance is the single most important thing you can do for longevity. And that means you get to a healthy body weight and you don't have long periods of deficits or long periods of surpluses over 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Now, if you have a high BMI, you need to be in a period of a deficit to get to a healthy BMI. I think that the optimal range of a BMI for longevity is actually much larger than we think. Like, I think if you're within, like, you don't need to be fitness model shredded to optimize your longevity. Like, I think the like sub 20% for men and probably sub 30% for women is probably in that like body comp range where you're kind of optimized for longevity. Now it may be a little bit lower than that, but I'd say that's probably right where you've optimized for longevity. And then it's about providing your body enough energy to go build the capacity that you need. So if you're always in a low energy intake state, you're not going to be able to go train hard. You're not going to be able to do high volumes of training. So you're not going to be able to build the recovery and adaptation processes that you need, right? If you eat 1,500 calories a day to maintain your 160-pound body weight, you're never going to be able to put out enough work to build the repair systems and the capacity in your body you need, right? So that's the first thing, is you need to have sufficient energy and you need to be in a place where you can consume sufficient energy and expend it in a healthy way. When we talk about just from that comes down strictly to calories, right? And so that's where like the if it fits your macros, whatever approach of like you just need the calories to be able to do the physical movement create those systems in your body.
Yeah.
Then we talk about nutrients. So we talk about nutrients. It's, the macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, fat. It's the micronutrients. It's the vitamins, the minerals, the fatty acids, the phytonutrients. It's all those things. And where those things come into play is those are important for turning the adaptations you are asking your body to do from exercise into the actual adaptations, right? If I go lift weights, I need the amino acids to be there to build the muscle tissue, right? If I'm asking my body to create better antioxidative systems in my body, I need the vitamins and the minerals and the sulfur to create the glutathione peroxidases and all those things in my body. So I have to be eating those to make sure my body has enough raw material to do those. So it is the quality of the food that helps ensure that you have the raw material to build all those systems in your body. And so when you think about it that way, it's like, okay, I need to consume the energy to go ask my body to adapt, and then I needed to have the raw material, the nutrients, to adapt.
Well said. And again, that highlights that we don't just care about calorie intake. It's got to be nutrition as micronutrient quality of your food as well. So yeah, very well said. I did want to ask a question there. We don't need to spend much time on this, but BMI. Do you think those charts are still relevant / accurate? Like, I mean, the reason I ask is if I put my stats in,
I'm going to get in a lot of hot water about this because this is going to be a very unpopular opinion. And it's probably going against a lot of what I don't understand why there is so much vitriol about BMI. I mean, I do and I don't. I understand it because people think it is a number that reflects who they are as a person, or it's like indicative of their, level of obesity or whatever. The reality of what BMI, when you actually ask what it really is, it is a risk predictive metric, right? If you strip out everything else about BMI, you take any sort of whatever out of it, and you put it into every risk prediction model, BMI is always one of the strongest predictors of any outcome. If you have a higher BMI, you have a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. If you have a higher BMI, you have a higher risk of cancer. If you have a higher BMI, you have a higher risk of diabetes. If you have a higher BMI, you have a higher risk of bad outcomes from surgery. So regardless of how you feel, whether it's reflective of your body adiposity, it is a risk predictive marker, and it's actually fairly good, right? The other thing to note about BMI is a lot of times we hear, hey, BMI is overestimating my, I have more muscle mass, so my BMI is not reflective.
Yes, right.
The thing is, it's still predictive of risk.
Okay, that's the important thing.
You could be 6'2", 280 with 6% body fat, so you're obviously not obese. But based on your BMI, you still have a higher likelihood of having a cardiovascular event. Like, this is just true.
That's interesting. But is that what BMI was initially designed for? Initially designed to do?
No.
Or is that just something we've learned from it?
It's something we've learned from it. But here's the other really interesting fact. If you take a population of 1 million people and you take their BMI, it is factually true that you are more likely that BMI underestimates your body adiposity than overestimates it. So it's more likely that you have a BMI that is considered quote unquote normal, but you have more body fat than you would expect, than it is that you would have a high BMI and have less body fat than you'd expect. That's true at population level. So we know that to be true.
What do you think? This is just a quiz for you. What do you think the average adult in the U.S., the average BMI for an adult?
29.
Oh, you already know this. Yes, it is 29.4. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Not great. Not great.
I mean, but
that was
here's
just a,
but here's the thing. I think we all have this idea of like there's something personal about the BMI metric and that it's like reflective of who we are. But just think about it in the same context as you would think about your blood pressure, right? Or your blood glucose or your cholesterol levels or it's another marker. It's part of the entire thing. It's like if I had a client come to me and they were a 6'2", 280-pound NFL athlete, and their BMI was 32 or 34, which would put them in the quote unquote obesity category, we would just have a conversation and be like, look, you're one of the rare exceptions. Your BMI says X. This doesn't mean you have a lot of the metabolic risks associated with obesity because you don't have the body adiposity. However, we know that if your goal, let's say you just retired from the NFL, your goal is to live to 100, like this
You need to
is
get that down.
something, well, or just like realize this is something that increases your risk of having,
Gotcha.
higher blood pressure, cardiovascular event, etc. And we can have the conversation of like, do you want to lose some of the muscle mass to increase potentially your longevity? Or is it like, hey, this is a risk. Doesn't mean you're actually going to have this outcome. On the other side, you may have a client who comes to me who's 5'8", 140 pounds. Their BMI says they're normal, but we do a body comp test and their body comp is, 35% body fat because they are, quote unquote skinny fat. Like that's the the nomenclature, but basically you're under muscled.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation would look like, hey, your BMI says you're within normal range. So some of these risks are probably a little bit lower. However, here's the other side of the coin. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's the plan from here. And so it's more of just a metric of you take everything into consideration.
This makes me wonder, does this have something to do with just being bigger overall? Right? When I like not necessarily fatter, but just the bigger you are as a body, that produces more stress on you just being a bigger person. That must
Yes.
be part of it, right?
There is a reason there are not dinosaur-sized humans.
What is it about being bigger that has that effect?
It's a lot of it's just physics. It's pressure,
Okay.
right?
See that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Makes
pressure.
makes sense to me.
It's it's a lot. It's sort of like when I go to the vet and my dogs are relatively lean, but they're like, hey, we want your dogs to be probably 5 to 10 pounds lighter because of just longevity purposes. It's like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like just pressure on joints.
So it's just more stress on the body.
Yeah. And it's like, you got to think
more stress
especially
on the heart,
from a cardiovascular perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's just more pressure.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I think of guys like, so you're big on basketball analogies, right? I think of Shaq. Like that dude's huge, right? I mean, guys like that are just bigger and taller overall tend not to live as long. So you kind of you look at this like there must be something to just being bigger overall, not necessarily obese or fat, but just like a bigger human. It seems.
But you know what's really weird is the opposite is actually true of lifespan in the animal kingdom.
That the bigger you are, the longer you live in the animal kingdom?
Yeah.
Well, why would that be?
I mean, with the exception of like tortoises, but like mice don't live very long. Rats don't live very long.
Yeah.
Elephants live a long time.
Interesting.
Whales live a long time.
Actually, yeah, that's true. And don't like giant tortoises and turtles live like hundreds of years? I think turtles can live in like several hundred years old. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got on that topic because that was just kind of one of those things a pattern that I've picked up on over the years.
Now, here's
like the older.
Yeah, but the one thing I will say on the other side of the coin of BMI is how we utilize it in clinical context, I think, is often incorrect. Like we use it as a hard cutoff, right? Like there's a lot of times you won't be insurance eligible for something based on a single metric of BMI, which I just think is dumb.
For sure.
It's sort of like let's say you were qualifying for a mortgage for your house, right? And there was one metric. They're like, nope, you can't qualify. It's like, well, why would that be? It's like, oh, well, we're only going to take your annual income into effect. It's like, well, what if I have $25 million in cash sitting in the bank and last year I didn't work and I want to buy a house, but interest rates are so low, I don't want to like put all the cash into it because I can get better money elsewhere. It's like, that would be stupid for the bank to do that, right? It's the same thing
Yeah.
of like, if you're trying to get approved for, a surgery, a medication, and the only metric they use is BMI, which unfortunately in some situations is how it's used. It's like that's just
right.
it's lazy and it's sloppy.
Yeah. So let's dive into I want to touch on a couple more benefits to really just kind of hit, take this home here is for people like what are the some of the additional benefits that we maybe don't think of, or if you're just joining us, maybe some a recap of some of the benefits. So far we've talked about cardio cardiovascular benefits to your musculoskeletal system, and what nutrition does. But we know that exercising regularly and eating well lowers your risk of many chronic diseases. So I just wanted to mention a few of those. Reduce risk of heart disease. We've talked about that before. Lower blood pressure, better blood sugar regulation, lower LDL levels, improved insulin sensitivity. You know a lot about that. It's beneficial for your brain. We just did an episode on that. Exercise can improve your memory, enhance your focus. Exercise can slow your actual cognitive decline. Like it can make your brain healthier. It even can. There's potential for exercise. There's evidence that suggests exercise reduces your risk of things like dementia and Alzheimer's. There's also that. You've also got some of the benefits of increased mobility, which allows you to be more independent later in life and your daily function, right? I think the ability to live independently as you age comes down to your strength and your mobility, right? And it's going to come a day where you think, can I get up off the floor without help? Can I carry groceries in? Can I walk up a flight of stairs? Those aren't just conveniences, right? Those are indicators of your independence and how independent you're going to be in the future. Strength training helps you preserve that muscle and your joint health, which directly translates to freedom in your daily life as you get older. And I think the other things that I want to mention too is that you can't overstate what exercise can do for your mood, I think, and how resilient you can end up feeling. Like if you've ever noticed how much we talked about this, I think last week, but have you ever noticed about how much better you feel mentally after a workout, right? That's not a coincidence. Like you and I talked about, hey, I've never had a workout that afterward I regretted, right? Because exercise increases dopamine and serotonin. It reduces symptoms of, maybe you feel anxious, that can help with reduce anxiety. Exercise can improve your sleep quality, help you cope with stress better. So like all of those things help you increase or enhance your mood or improve your mood, right? And then this is probably the one that I don't think we've talked about, but inflammation. Exercise and eating right and having a healthy body weight lowers your overall systemic inflammation and can improve your immune system, right? The I'm obviously not an expert on this, but I know that strength training can lower inflammatory markers. I know that a diet in whole foods and fiber and healthy fats can reduce oxidative stress. I know that micronutrients in things like fruits and vegetables and lean proteins, those can support your immune cells. So there's also that aspect of things. So eating right, exercising has such an impact, such a heavy influence on areas that we don't think about. I just thought it was important to kind of mention those last few there, that that's, don't overlook what it can do for your mood and your immune function and what it can do to prevent inflammation, which is very risky.
One of the more interesting things that I've learned as it relates to longevity in the last few years is a statistic that, and I'd have to go look up the exact number, but One of the best ways, or let me rephrase it. Do you know what the biggest indicator of somebody developing dementia or Alzheimer's is? Outside of like genetic predisposition.
I mean, is it how active they are? I guess I wouldn't. I don't know.
It's retirement. When people
Wait,
stop
with
when
thinking,
people stop utilizing their
you
brain in
gotcha.
complex ways for extended
Please.
periods of time, the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia goes up pretty substantially. And so, as you're just kind of talking through some of those things, I think what the perspective that people have on longevity, I think, is this idea of I'm going to do something and then I'll be okay forever. And the reality is our bodies are biological, which means it's always adapting to its environment. So when you stop giving it adaptation mechanisms, it doesn't think it needs to do anything to survive,
Right.
right?
So it
So
deteriorates.
when you stop using your brain, when you stop using your body, it's going to go in an accelerated phase of I don't need to keep these robust systems operating because I don't need to do anything to survive, right? And so this whole idea of like I'm just going to do something for a bit so I can live better forever. It's like part of this bargain you're making is I'm going to maintain these systems in my body for the rest of my life. And the nice thing is, it actually, once you get to a point, it doesn't take a huge amount of effort to keep them up. You just can't neglect them forever. It's sort of like your house, right? If you do a little bit every week, it's not that bad. But if you wait 30 years and then you're like, well, okay, I guess I'm replacing the roof. I'm redoing all of the plumbing. Like I got to strip everything down to the studs. I got to, completely renovate my backyard. I've got to replace every toilet. Or it's like, oh, this weekend I'm going to just replace this one toilet in my house. Oh, this weekend I'm going to go mow the lawn. Oh, this weekend I'm going to go like fix this, the sink that's leaking. Like it's a little bit like that.
What do you think you'll do to keep your mind sharp after you retire, whenever that might be? What would you do?
There is such an infinite amount of knowledge available to us as people. Just go find a new thing to learn. Pick up a new hobby. Go build a car. Go take a woodworking class.
Something that's mentally
Go
stimulating to you.
go sit on an advisory board somewhere. Like just go do something. I mean, the idea of, and I think Jordan Peterson was talking about this, but like the goal is not to go sit on a beach and drink margaritas for 30 years once you're done working. The goal is to have the ability to go do that whenever you want, but still be a productive person.
Yeah, there's also, I think, a reason why you've seen people who are obviously past retirement age, but they're working, maybe they're working at a grocery store or something. It's not like they're doing it for the money. They need to, like, they're obviously doing it because they need some sort of stimulation because sitting at home gets really boring and there's nothing else to do. It's like you need that sort of stimulation to keep, like, my dad is retired. I mean, both my parents are retired, but like my dad sits at home. And what does he do for mental stimulation? He actually engraves glass. He does artwork on glass. Super cool stuff. But like he enjoys it and it keeps him mentally stimulated. Like it's huge. Right. So yeah, the fact that you mentioned that as I mean, what you're basically saying is just as you would keep your muscles and your bones strong, keep your brain strong too, because if you don't, it's got no reason to keep its gray matter. And you start to just lose brain cells.
Yeah, I already lose so many brain cells every day anyway. I can't afford to lose anymore.
Um
uh,
yeah, I think no, it's been a good discussion. I think maybe to sort of recap it one more time, or just to kind of add a few extra things, a couple suggestions for people. Like obviously we've talked about what to do, but I think if we can give people some practical examples here, what I would say this looks like in the real world for people listening is, so for strength training, even just, it's not like you have to do it every day. Maybe a couple times a week, 2 to 4 times a week, something like that, whatever you can fit in. Focus on the compound movements, right? Squats, lunges, push exercises, pull exercises, right? And keep it simple. You don't need a fancy plan. Just progressively, challenge your body. Same thing with cardio. A couple times a week. It doesn't have to be running marathons. It's walking or biking or swimming, anything that gets your heart rate up, for 20 to 30 minutes, something like that. Right. And then I just think daily movement is so huge. Take the stairs, park further away, you know, get your steps in. Movement adds up and it matters, and it doesn't have to be like strenuous. It just little things that add up over time that keep you healthy. Nutrition, how does that look in the real world? Okay, well, eat enough protein, especially as you get older. Um, don't fear carbs and fats, right? Just choose good quality versions of both of those things. We all know what like healthy food looks like, right? So choose those. Don't don't undereat chronically, right? If you're losing muscle and energy, actually more food might be the answer, not less, right? So pay attention to your calorie balance, your energy balance. I think don't aim to be perfect. I think a lot of us overthink this. Don't aim to be perfect. Just be consistent. We talk about that so much, right? You don't need to be perfect to see like actual results and like benefits from this. You just need to keep showing up. How often do we talk about that? Just keep showing up. Keep it simple. Do what you can do. You'll be all right.
You just have to keep putting adaptation pressure on your body.
Yeah, you have to keep giving it a reason to adapt. Doing the same thing all the time obviously just maintains status quo. It's the next challenge. It's the next thing that's going to help you grow, whether it's mentally or physically. Or that's the whole progressive overload philosophy, right? Like that's what we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is though, like you're not going to be at your peak strength and deadlifting 2,000 pounds when you're 70 because you've been progressively overloading for 40 years. Like biology
Right.
just doesn't work that
Right.
way, right? Like we do have
Yeah.
a peak capacity. So the goal with longevity is just keep asking your body to maintain its repair systems. So keep stressing it. Because if you don't, it has no reason to stay around. I mean, maybe that's why like every time you see the stories of like the people who lived like 120, they're like, I smoked 6 pack of cigarettes a day. It's like they just won the genetic lottery of their body's incapable of developing lung cancer, and they just kept telling it needs to fight it off.
That reminds me of a good question. I don't know the answer. This is obviously speculative, but well, first of all, what's the oldest? Do you know what the age is of the oldest human that ever lived? I think
I
it's like
think like
123 or something like that.
yeah, I think that's about the upper limit. And
Well,
here's my guess is even if you do everything perfectly and you have the right genes and you have massive medical intervention, I think that's probably the upper limit of biology. Because part of
That's
the
what I was
problem
going to
is
ask you.
like I honestly just think it comes down to like a fundamental principles problem of our cells do have to divide at some point. And
Yeah,
without massive engineering, they're going to hit that Hayflick limit where like they just can't keep replicating themselves. And so there's like a certain amount of replications that you just can't keep doing. It's sort of like
you can't escape entropy.
yeah, it's like when you take a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Sure,
There's
it
like
degrades over time.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna see. Do you think we're gonna ask our AI friend? Do you think humans could ever live to be hundreds or several hundreds of years old, or what's our upper limit? Let's just see what this thing says.
I mean, could you imagine just dealing with the bullshit of life for 200 years?
No, wouldn't really
Like,
want to. Okay,
If you lived to 200, how many kids would you have? And you'd be so broke, like financially and mentally. It'd be like, I have to
you would
raise 28 kids. This is
Yeah.
insane.
like eventually you just wouldn't want to live anymore, I think. Okay, so the oldest verified human, Gene Calment, who died at age 122. So we were close.
Yeah.
Most longevity scientists agree that under current biology, the maximum natural human lifespan is probably somewhere between 115 to 125 years. But that's under the assumption we don't radically alter our biology. So could we live hundreds of years? Technically, maybe. Here are the leading scientific views and technologies that could
Technically,
extend
maybe.
lifespan. That's what it says. So cellular and genetic repair. Aging is driven by DNA damage, telomere shortening, and cellular senescence. I think I'm saying that right. Therapies like senescence. Excuse me. Therapies like CRISPR, telomerase activation, and senolytics aim to repair or slow these processes. If we continually fix the damage before it accumulates, there may not be a fixed upper limit. Then you've got organ and tissue regeneration, AI and nanotechnology. Theoretical future tech like nanobots patrolling the bloodstream could remove plaques, destroy cancer cells, and repair microscopic damage in real time. That's pretty interesting. AI-driven diagnostics and intervention may help predict disease years in advance and act before symptoms reappear. So that's interesting too. Like AI, like increasing our lifespan because it can like get in and predict disease before it ever arises. That's kind of interesting too. Anyways, it summarizes it and says, so could humans live to 200 years or more? Under current biology, very unlikely, but with radical medical breakthroughs, possibly. If we solve aging at the cellular level, there may be no hard cap. However, we'd also need to prevent cancer, heart disease, dementia, maintain immune function and neuroplasticity, and sustain the body's entire ecosystem, not just extend the clock. So, yeah,
Dude,
interesting.
Just think how rich you would be if you lived to 200 years. Like, let's just say by the time you were 60, you would save $1 million, and you let it compound for 140 years at, let's just say 10% interest rates. I'm doing the math here. You would. Oh, the compound interest calculator won't even let me go to 140 years.
What does it let you go up to?
You would turn $1 million in 100 years to $13 billion. That is why. Did you ever watch the movie Twilight?
No, I've seen pieces.
That's the reason vampire families are so rich, because they live for hundreds of years. So like they put $1,000 in the stock market in 1919, and now they have $5 billion.
It's interesting, the money world, like, to me is, I mean, compound interest is pretty fascinating when you think about it. I mean, $1,000 invested at 10% makes 100 a year, but $1 million at the same 10% makes 100,000, right? Your wealth compounds exponentially. So like, but I think that's why people say the first million's the hardest, right? But once you cross that threshold, your money starts working harder than you do, right? Like, and your wealth protects itself. So it's kind of interesting. Like, yeah, it's that first kind of getting there is the hardest part, but then your money just makes other money. Like if it's just sitting there and compounding and you're just sitting back, like,
how am I going to be the first trillionaire? I'm just going to live forever.
That's also interesting. The difference between $1 billion and $1 trillion is so massive that it's hard to kind of comprehend. Like, have you ever seen that depiction of like a stack of, here's what $1 million looks like next to a person, and then here's $1 billion and $1 trillion? It's insane. Like, it's insane.
Now just multiply that times 37, and that's how much money our kids are going to have to pay off.
Oh, dude. All right, that's a depressing note. We should probably log off at this point. But we are out of time. So thank you all for watching. I hope this was a good episode. By the way, since we are using new software, this is our first time using it. Brad, you are going to have to turn your camera off, and so am I, so that we can do our proper outro. So thank you all for watching. Appreciate you guys, and we will be back next week. Let me make sure I can actually get out of here with the outro. Hang on, people. Media. There we go. Sorry, still learning new software. All right, we are out of here. Goodbye.